So I decided I want to go to West Berlin and I want to touch the wall from the other side. One day in the morning, I went to Friedrichstraße, took the East German border control, looked at my passport. I was 15. They stamped it and let me go. So all of a sudden, I was there in West Berlin alone, without any map, with I think one Western coin in my pocket and a whole day in front of me. And I decided I need to find the wall.
Hello and welcome to the Ronny Leber Show, where every week we bring you fascinating guests with inspiring stories of success and overcoming obstacles from the worlds of sports, business, and entertainment. To support this channel, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and hit the like button so that we can deliver you the best content possible. He grew up in Warsaw, Poland, in the times of deep communism. After finishing, decided that communism is not his thing, and he fled to the West to study economics in Cologne, Germany. Right after his studies, he started a career with Microsoft that took him to different leadership positions, from hosting Bill Gates in Moscow and building up Eastern Europe, as well as the Latin American market after transitioning to the US. He then transitioned to the production at the local NBC station in South Florida before he was actually taking his knowledge back home to Poland to head the national TV news production team. Now he's a master presenter, coach, and trainer. He communicates with ease in 6 different languages, and I'm happy to have him on the show. Please welcome, here is Olo Swida. Woo!
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, Ronny. 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Hello, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Olo, great to have you here. And when you look back at your life today and when you hear your story, what comes to mind to you?
What comes to mind is definitely be proactive, try as many things as you can. When I was a young kid, Indiana Jones movie came out. And in an Indiana Jones movie, things were happening very fast. One action starts, it doesn't come to a finish, another one is starting already, is overlapping it. And I thought at that point of time, I would like to one day be 65, sit down on my rocking chair and look back at my life. And I thought I would like my life to be like an Indiana Jones movie, where a lot of things are changing very, very fast, very quick. So today, I kind of not there yet, age-wise, but getting close. And it was like that. It was an Indiana Jones movie thing. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's very cool. And I mean, really looking back at when you were a kid and you grew up in communist Europe, like what was it? Just to also give an understanding for everybody that has not, but that doesn't remember that, because basically in 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell on the 9th of November in 1989, basically there was also the end of communism in Europe. So please also give us a glimpse of what life was back then, and also what have you imagined back then as a kid that you would become?
Life was gray. When I was growing up in a gray place. Everything was lack of lights. I have always had as a kid was privileged. I had a glimpse of the touch to the West, since my mom was an English teacher, was teaching English at a university in Warsaw, and she was waking up always with the BBC news on the shortwave radio. So I got always a glimpse of what was going on there. But the rest, you were locked like in a can. You didn't know what was happening outside. There was a Radio for Europe, which was a Polish-speaking American station providing information about Eastern Europe. So that was one thing. The other thing, which looking back is probably the worst thing of all, that you become a prisoner of your own thoughts. You had to control what you think, what you believe, because you may be caught on something wrong, because it always had to be compliant with the current policy of the government and of the system. So that was something that for me was really hard to take. I grew up always in this atmosphere, having the glimpse of the West through the radio. And
But even that was kind of illegal, wasn't it? Like to listen to Western stations.
it was tolerated. It was at this point of time when I was in the 60s, it was not illegal anymore. 10 years earlier, yes, it was illegal. So my parents always asked me not to tell at school what radio we are listening to. Don't say it. Nobody needs to know. And then later, we found out that within our closest friends circle, there were people who were informing the secret police what was going on in the homes. So that
Wow.
was reality. That was the reality.
It sounds like an old James Bond movie, or like those old spy movies in a way. And now, when you're actually looking at that, and or when, at what point in time did you decide that communism, that this system was not your thing?
Well, I had my mom was of German descent, and she had an aunt in East Berlin. I was maybe 12, maybe 13. I went there first with my grandma to East Berlin to visit my aunt for a couple of weeks. And in East Berlin, for me, it was always Berlin. But then I learned there was an East Berlin and there was a West Berlin. And actually, everybody was looking into West Berlin, what's going on there. And somehow, this BBC news of the from the West and the West Berlin, which was just a few hundred meters away from the S-Bahn train, I kind of started connecting those things. Year later, my mom organized an exchange with a family close to Magdeburg in East Germany, where I spent fantastic 2 weeks with a fantastic family. On my way back from Magdeburg to Warsaw, I stopped again at my aunt's place in East Berlin, and I had one extra day until my train would be taking for Warsaw. So I decided to go to West Berlin. For some strange, I was 14, maybe 15. For some strange reason, the Polish authorities gave me a passport, a full passport, which would enable us to travel across the whole world, as opposed to just the personal ID card, which was only limited to the communist countries. And I had the passport, theoretically just to travel to Magdeburg, but I could use the passport to go to West Berlin. So I decided I want to go to West Berlin and I want to touch the wall from the other side. The year before, I saw the wall, or even you didn't see the wall from the eastern side. You just saw a lot of police and a lot of no man's land territory. But the wall you barely ever saw. This time I said, I want to see it from the other side and I want to go there and touch it. So the one day, the morning, I went to Friedrichstraße, took the East German border control, looked at my passport. I was 15. They stamped it and let me go. So all of a sudden, I was there in West Berlin alone, without any map, with I think one Western coin in my pocket, and a whole day in front of me. And I decided I need to find the wall. But how do I find the wall? So I started looking at buses with tourists, and I thought, those buses probably are taking the tourists to the wall so that they can take a picture. So I started following the buses. Finally, I got there. And I saw the wall where you could just go and touch it. You could go and touch it from the other side. It was written. There were a lot of hippies. They were drinking beer. It was painted in all kind of colors of peace at this point of time. And I had to touch it. And then I thought, okay, one day I will be here on the other side. So that day I had to go back, but it was already come somewhere imprinted in my head that one day I will get out and live in a free country.
Wow, very beautiful. And I think there was Checkpoint Charlie at Friedrichstraße, if I'm correct. But anyway, I mean, it's an incredible story. So when you think about that moment and also that spark that got lit there,
Yes.
would you say that this was really a turning point also in your life?
Today I see it like that. I was not aware maybe of it then. But today, looking back, I think that was the spark which kind of did drive my motivation to get out. So eventually, when I was 19, I packed my backpack and left. And I went to Germany, spent first many years in Germany, where relatives of mine
Before we
lived.
go there, just one
Yeah.
more question about that impression. Like, was this your first time in the West when you went to West Berlin? And also,
Yes.
what was your impression? Because you said life was very gray, and suddenly you came to the West. How was that? Like a Polish kid who suddenly sees the whole wild world, even though it's just West Berlin.
For the impressions I remember, it was colorful. I was there during the day. It was colorful, and at the end of the day, beginning of the evening, the neon lights were on. It was so colorful. It was so bright comparing with the gray on the other side. So that's kind of the impression I remember.
Wow, very nice. And so basically, okay, so take us with you. Basically, then there came a point in time when you said you were 19, when you
Yes.
decided, I'm gonna pack my things and leave. Did you have to flee, or was it that with your passport you could go, or how did that work?
Well, at that point of time, you had to apply for the passport uh, to get out, and then when you came back, you had to give the passport back to the authorities. So you could have either your personal ID or the passport in your hand. You never could have both at those times. So they would give you the passport, but take away the personal ID. When you return, they would swap it back. To apply for the passport, of course, it was a long process. Of course, they were loved to make difficulties. There were different ways of doing it. Uh, I was a student. I had to have all the exams for this summer session at the university approved. It was one important requirement. The other one, you had to show that you had $100. So my dad gave me $100. Say, hey, just to show to the authorities that you have them. And I packed my backpack, got on the train, with Polish currency, bought the ticket to Berlin, then crossed to West Berlin with the S-Bahn Friedrichstraße again. And from there, with hitchhiking, went to Peine by Hanover, where the relatives of my parents lived. And yeah, and then the journey started.
So basically, you could go, and then you were there, but it was not actually meant that, like, they didn't give you a
It was
passport to leave the country. It was just like you
correct.
decided, I'm not going to come back.
Very good point. I left as a tourist, and I was supposed to come back after summer was over, and I didn't. So I was considered by the authorities a criminal because I was a traitor of my fatherland, and I was not allowed to go back. If I went back, I would go to jail. And this continued for about 7 years. I knew about it. I took it into account. At that point of time, my parents were still alive, were still young. So I didn't have a need of taking care of them. And yeah, after 7 years, the rules started to relax, and I was allowed to go back.
Wow, very incredible. So basically, then went to Cologne. You studied economics, and then basically one of the things that you did in Cologne was to be a cab driver. And then suddenly, from being a cab driver, you became to one of the guys from Microsoft who kind of was somebody who built the East in a way, like Russian and Polish and so on. Like, tell us about this transition, because it seems like quite a steep journey.
It was a steep journey. It was a fun journey. I studied forever. My mom was really frustrated that I take so long. I've been building computers as a student. I've been doing all kind of stuff. I've
And this in
been
German now, basically. Like
in
before you
Köln,
grew
in
up.
Köln, in Köln. I went for 1 year as an exchange student to Spain, to Barcelona. So then came back to Köln, started building the computers, was driving the taxi cab for 7 years over the weekends at night, and kind of I was getting along. But finally, I had to graduate. I graduated. I was about to graduate. The exams in the Cologne University were really tough. And then I saw an advertising for Microsoft in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, and I thought, oh, okay, I have a friend in Munich. Let's have the company pay for my trip there. And they will not hire me, of course, but at least I will be able to visit my friend I haven't seen for a long time. So I applied. They invited me, and guess what? They gave me the job. So then all of a sudden, I was one guy for all Eastern Europe. It was the summer of 1989. So the communism was about to fall, but didn't fall everywhere yet. The wall was still there. And Gorbachev was in power. And yeah, and the objective was to develop East European market, which was full of piracy, and develop it for software, with all the strings attached to it and complexities related to it about supporting local software developers, so that they can develop programs for our platform, that they can sell their own software, not that it will be stolen somewhere else. So making seminars in Siberia, in Donetsk, where the war is going on today, and also getting Bill Gates to Moscow and to launch the first Russian product, MS-DOS 401, and giving Bill Gates the box of Russian software in front of the Lenin Mausoleum at the Red Square. Uh, that was a funny picture, which went around the world. At that point of time, Bill Gates was barely known in the world. Um, So yeah, so there
What,
was
what year was that with Bill Gates?
must have been 91 or 92,
And of
somewhere
course, I
around
mean,
there.
you as a Microsoft employee, you obviously knew who Bill Gates was, and you also knew his trajectory onto the computer and actually the technology world in general. What was your conception at that time of Bill Gates? Like, how did you perceive him?
Bill Gates is until today probably was the best role model I've seen. He was a very simple person. He would not like to show off a lot unless you challenge him. If you challenge him intellectually, you better be prepared. You better have all your arguments together. And you could challenge him on any topic, on atomic power stations, on everything. He was extremely well prepared and extremely knowledgeable, but at the same time, very kind of shy, not showing around his stuff. You would walk next to him, you would not notice that it's Bill Gates. So I'm still have a lot of admiration at what he's doing, and also another piece. Watching his activities today, there's always a thought about the unprivileged people. So the technology, artificial intelligence today, how will it benefit the world, the people, the companies? Great, all true. And in his thoughts and his Bill Gates notes, you can always hear a topic: how will the unprivileged people benefit out of it? So it's always part of his thinking, which I think is great.
Wow. So basically, you built up the East in a way, or you helped build it up. Also, one of the things, like you did something similar later on, also with Latin America. I think I'm going to go into that in a little while. But first, then you transition from the East to the headquarter in Redmond, Washington, in the U.S.
Yep.
to go to work for Microsoft in the U.S. Was this also when you then became an American citizen? Because at the moment you have three passports: the Polish, the German, and the American, or how was that?
The American, the German I got because of my mom's descent, so I got it very early on. The Polish was given to me once the communists was given back to me once after those 7 years I was not allowed to go, and eventually I decided to live in the U.S. and I got the green card and I kept the green card. And after September 11, when I saw September 11 with the green card in my pocket, I thought, oops, it's better get a citizenship. And also, you want to live in this country here, so you should be citizen. And got involved also in all kind of social things related to the country you live. So that was the cool part is the paper is one thing. The other thing is how you feel. So I feel at home at three different places. I feel it's funny when you see soccer gameplays on national teams. Unless they are playing against each other, then there's a problem. But usually they are not. Then, then I can cheer for three different teams and get emotional with three different national anthem and three different flags, which is cool, which is great. Who told us that you can be only one? It was one of my dilemma, which I had in the 20s. Somehow I was programmed to think that you can be only one. You need to reject the other in order to become the new one. And then I said, who said that? There is no evidence of that. So you can feel the one and the other and maybe another. You just need to feel it and be part of it and take care of it. So then my world just opened. I didn't have to reject one thing in order to accept the other. I could be both or three.
Wow, very very magical. And basically, so let's go back to to go Microsoft in Washington, and then we went down to Florida to actually build up Latin America. And what I found fascinating about that is what you told me. Like basically, first of all, the Latin America thing, or both Americas in a way, that was kind of similar to the East, I believe. It was like also because you had reference from building up Eastern Europe to kind of also develop the American or Latin American market. And what I found was fascinating was also how to bring in the language component, because your job was to build a bridge basically between the software and the user. Was it like that?
Well, yes, partially it was it. I was always fascinated with the concept of communicating between the human and the machine. So maybe let's make a step back, still in the Polish and the East European market. I was the guy who approved the Polish glossary for Windows, so that like Windows, what Polish words are used for cut, paste, open file, and a bunch of other things which show up in the Windows menu. And I made a trick. I just wanted the Polish user to be at ease with the machine, and I put it in grammatically form in the imperative. In English, there is no difference. It says open, open. But in all the other languages, in German, you would say öffnen, which is infinitive, or öffne, which is an order, which is imperative. You have the same thing in Polish, you have the same thing in Spanish, you have the same thing in French, and most of the language. So without saying anything to my boss, I put the imperative form because I wanted to give the power to the user over the machines. I'm here giving you, machine, in order to open a file or to close a file or to do something. And so it went through. Nobody, my boss couldn't check that only once this product was done, and it exists until today. Further on, it even if you want to buy a ticket at the train station, has nothing to do with Windows. The way how the human communicates with the machine kind of remained the same. So in Latin America, on the other side, when I was working in Latin America, uh, I had a very interesting position reporting to me, who was run by Ricardo. He was an Argentinian. His job was to make sure that we have only one Spanish. We didn't want to have a version of Iberian Spanish from Europe and Latin American Spanish, but to have one Spanish. How to do it? Very difficult. To looking for synonyms, to finding synonyms there in this concept. So Ricardo did a fantastic job looking for it. It turned out that the best professor for Spanish language who systematized everything was living in Augsburg in Germany for some reason. Don't ask me why. Here we had a bunch of interesting things going on. Just for example, the word computer. The word computer in Spain would be called ordenador. The Spanish would look at what the French were doing. In France, is ordinateur, which orders things. So the Spanish took it over from the French. The Latin American were looking at not at France, not at Spain. They were looking at America. So it's computador or computadora. In some cases, it was a feminine. In some cases, it was a masculine. So Ricardo's poor job was to find a word which would suit everybody. And it was a difficult process, but eventually it happened. So we called it finally the PC.
El PC.
LPC, LPC, which works for everyone. Uh, so that was a very interesting job, just to make sure that there's one language, one simplified, understandable for everyone, and accepted by everybody. I think today, looking from a perspective, it was very important to make the computer be a machine that people use, enjoy, and know how to get benefit out of it.
Wow, that's very fascinating. When you like talking about this, also the difference between, or like the communication between humans and machines or computers, and also how to give people the power. How do you actually see also what's currently happening with AI? I also know that you have also some degree in AI and so on. Like you're very much into the topic. So how do you see that? What's actually happening now with AI?
Well, I have a very funny way of looking at it. AI has been around already for a long time. It was a big topic before COVID came. Then came COVID. COVID took all the attention of the media. First, what, 2 years, 3 years? Now COVID is gone, so we are back to AI. So AI has been around already for a long time. Uh, the the public opinion got really irritated or excited in a negative way about AI once AI started writing essays for the children at school. So instead of the children to write the essays themselves, they would go to ChatGPT and put an essay together, and all of a sudden was a big alarm for everyone. Wow, what AI can do! But it has been around here already for a long time before. Um, yes, this is the third revolution from my perspective. The first one was the PC itself, when it replaced the typewriters. The second one was the connecting the cloud, the connecting it together, the internet and the cloud. And this will be the third big revolution. Uh, yes, it will kill a lot of jobs, in my opinion. It will kill a lot of creative jobs, just what automation did to factories. This is what will AI do to creative jobs, white collar jobs. Illustrators, composers, this kind of people will have a hard time. They need to do something else or do it in a different way, in my opinion. How? That's a $1 billion question. AI is pretty much, but AI that's interesting, and I think it's we are missing in the current discussion, is that AI is pretty much replicating what was already done. It was already done, and then they create apparently something new, but actually it's called copies, different pieces or copies from something that has been already developed. So the creativity is low. It's just repeating what was already done. And now, how humanity wants to maintain creativity with artificial intelligence ruling the world, I don't know. Because there will be a point where you will need to create your own stuff. You create a new rocket that will go to Mars, or create something better, which is not only a replication, a copy of something already existed. Yes, there are a lot of things that were created already. Yes, there's always a problem of accessing it. Yes, ChatGPT or DALI or the other uh, artificial intelligence systems allow us just to put it in a context very quickly, but it's pretty much a replication of what has been created already in the past. So that's one of my thoughts. The other thought is the important part in artificial intelligence, which is kind of missing in the current discussion, is about the access to the training data. How? Let's just imagine very simple.
The
Artificial,
access to the training data. Okay.
yeah, okay. So this system is like a system of codes of lines of code, which are relatively easy to build. And you can train the system on something, just like you can train a dog to bring you the bone back. You can train the system to do something for you, to distinguish a picture of a cat from a dog or something. But you need to repeat it many, 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 many times, and finally the system gets it. Or to say that this kind of X-ray is cancer and this is not cancer, and to do it, you can train the system for that. But the system itself is simple. The tricky part is the data. What are you going to train your dog or your system on? And the access to this data is a very big thing. Today, ChatGPT is relying on public domain data. Whatever was written in the internet somewhere in a smart way, takes it all together and produces something what you asked for. But what about the more specific ones? This data is still for free. I know some people who are doing things with radiology. They are getting a bunch of radiology pictures for free because they know someone, a friend, an aunt, someone there. But this data will become an asset, and the amount of data. So you train the system on the training data, then you need to another set of data you use for testing it. Is my system working well? And then you go to production. An AI system can predict things. We know predictions from weather forecasts, right? Already has been around for many times. So this is something similar, not about the weather, but about anything you want to do. Just it is very similar what they create. I remember way before COVID in Warsaw, Poland, there was a laboratory of a famous company, and they were doing a lot of AI experiments. They had a show one day, and the gentleman played a music from his laptop, and it was resembling very much Chopin. And I was like, wow, this is like Chopin. I'm not a big expert on music, but I could recognize it was Chopin. And I said, is it Chopin? And he said, yeah, almost good. It was created by the system, by the training data set, which we gave was only Chopin's works, all Chopin's works. So then you, as an input, you give all Chopin's works, and then the system based on that can create its own Chopin piece of music. Now, who owns the copyrights to that? Does it own the same people who own the Chopin? Maybe Chopin is public domain by now, maybe not. Similar system I read about it was about Van Gogh. System was trained on all Van Gogh pictures. So that was the training data set. Someone owns the copyright to it. And then the system was able to draw a picture which looked like Van Gogh. Who owns the rights to it? The same
So
people who
basically,
own the rights to the Van Gogh, or the guys who wrote the system, or is it public domain? What is it? So that will be fun.
so yeah, so basically, there's still a lot of work, or also a lot of legal work to be done, and so on. Like a lot of frameworks that need to be set around AI. But if you would put it in one sentence, what AI, what your take on AI?
Buy the data set, own the data set. That will be the next
Interesting.
El Dorado. That will be the next El Dorado. If you own the
Wow,
data set, and on your data set, a lot of systems are being trained, and you can get a royalty out of it, you are then the new Bill Gates.
very fascinating. Okay. Um,
That's, yeah.
okay, I like it. I'm gonna let it flow like that. Let's go back into your story. When you
Oh,
were when you were basically when or how was the transition from Microsoft then to NBC, like from a computer software company to a or also cloud company and so on, then to a television company?
that was fun because at one after 10 years with Microsoft, I just said, okay, everything has been invented already. There is nothing new. How many new functions can you put in Excel where most of the people are not using them anyhow? So why would someone care? Uh, at the same time, television was analog, and everybody knew it will go digital. And but how, when, where? That was unclear. So I decided, okay, I want to be part of this mess. There will be a shakeup in the market. I want to be part of that revolution. But what do I know about television? Well, everybody watches television and has an opinion about a program here or there. But what's the business model behind it? How it's being produced? How it's being done? How much does it cost to produce different elements in a different way? Nobody has an idea unless they are professionals in the area. So I decided to quit Microsoft, and I enrolled into the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale in Florida, to the video production department, just to learn how to become a video production professional and understand all of those things. Understand how you make a program, what's important, what's not important, how you budget it, how you get the permits that are required, and so on and so on. Um, so that was a really interesting concept. And then I did a bunch of different things. The funnest part was working for NBC in Florida. In the morning news, from I had to start before 5 o'clock. The news was from 5 to 7, and it was reporting about all the local things happening here. And it's a machine; it's an engine which needs to run. Um it was very interesting to be part of it, to learn how to do it in an effective way. Where how news is being constructed. It's a factory, and the results at the end counts. How many people did view your program? And we were always number two in the market, two Nielsen points behind the number one, and the objective was always to beat the other guys. And sometimes some days we were able to do it, and we got extra donuts from chief of news, high fives, and it was fun.
Extra donuts. Well, that sounds very American, of course.
Of
And
course, yes.
and then actually, and then you went back to Poland. Like you went back, and it is there's always or oftentimes this saying like the profit in your own land doesn't count a lot, but you've been away quite a bit, and with your career at Microsoft and then also NBC, you basically were then heading quite a department at the Polish national TV station.
Yes, that was a very interesting part of my life. I got a job at Polish National Television, Telewizja Polska, and I was in charge of the production teams for news. Polish television had three channels. which with four different newscast styles. What they were saying, this was journalism, it was politics, someone else was in charge of it. But how do we show it in the on the screen? How things move, how quick? That was my responsibility, of the responsibility of the people under me. At one point of time, we had around 300 people working for that. Yes, it was a state company, maybe a little bit overstaffed, with all kind of different issues there. Do we need an extra driver, or can the cameraman drive the car, or this kind of things? But also how to make it look cool and approachable. In Poland, there is a major news was at this point of time a major newscast at 7:30 p.m., where families were sitting at the table and eat dinner with the TV on. Yes, it was not always very polite. My mom didn't like it, but I know that millions of families were doing it then, and I think keep doing it until today. So we were there at the kitchen tables of millions of households, and let's be entertaining. Let's be nice with them. Let's show them something interesting. Let's honor the fact that we are eating dinner with millions of families in the country. So what we need to do in the newscast, how we need to show it in the picture, how we need to show it on the screen, what needs to happen. So that was kind of one of the ideas behind of changing things and making them look really cool and nice and friendly.
Wow. We already talked a little bit about language. We talked about it also with the computer. We talked about it that you grew up, or you don't just have three passports right now. You speak six languages. You grew up with three of them, which was Polish, German, and English. And then you additionally mastered also Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian. And just as a hobby on the side, you decided, well, I'm going to study some Hebrew. Yeah, maybe not to the same extent as the other six languages. But first of all, in today's day and age, and that might sound provocative, but somebody might ask, well, do I even need to learn a language? A computer can do it for me. Why do I need to speak a lot of languages?
That's a good point, especially when in Facebook you don't need to really understand what people wrote down there, because there's auto translate and it translates into the language you need. That's a good point. We didn't have it in my times when I was young. It definitely opens my peace of mind. It's not only the language itself, it's also the emotion related to the words in a certain language. And this can vary very much. Language always fascinated me. When I was a small kid, I was able to think, to dream, without being able to write or read in three languages. So somehow three different channels were open when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, which probably would become very helpful later in life. It is a way of getting into communities, into different cultures, to understanding them better. This what fascinates me about that. And Hebrew, yes, Hebrew is. I'm fascinated with the technology that's being developed in Israel, and how does the language enable this small little country to be so creative in technology. So that's another thing. For example, you don't in Hebrew you don't write the vowels, only consonants. So kids in school from third grade need to just imagine the vowel, need to try the vowel, and sometimes they are wrong, sometimes they are off. But from small on, they always need to be creative. Imagine sometimes something you will see on the street which is misspelled. There's hardly any one spelling rule. I was shocked when I saw that. And the local people look at me and said, "What's your problem? You understand both, right?" And we, in our Western civilization, we have only one way of spelling a word, only one. And just don't do it wrong, because then you will be considered that you didn't pay attention at school and you don't know the spelling rules. Da 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 da. So the Israelis are much more relaxed. Now, how does this contribute to the creativity of trying new things, exploring new things? I think it does a lot. A lot of the most technological inventions are happening in Silicon Valley and in Israel. So for some reason, the culture there supports it, in my opinion. So that was a part of my fascination with Hebrew.
You already were talking about that you were fascinated about languages and how languages shape our thinking. Can you give us another example of that?
That's a good question. I give you one example. I think we think in languages, not in concept, not in pictures. There are different theories. That's my point of view on it. I remember when I learned about computers, I learned about it in Germany. Uh, how the different pieces, the hard drive and the video card, what it was called, and this is how it got stored in my brain. And then later, I was confronted with the English words or Spanish words calling the same piece, and I had to put another sticker, another label under the same thing. Under yeah, I already had in my head. So my recommendation for people who are learning languages is try to think in the language. So if you have a Spanish conversation with someone, try to think in it. Try to think in Spanish rather than translating all the time in your head. It will flow much better. If you think, I don't know, in Spanish or in German, try to think in German. It takes a moment to switch. You can practice it very easily yourself. You don't need any teacher, you don't need any school, you don't anything. Just whatever is surrounding you at this specific moment, think in that language you want to train. So you
Hmm.
don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to watch anything. Just describe the world around you using the words of the language you want to train. And sometimes you will miss a word. So then quickly check it in the vocabulary in the dictionary what it will be, or maybe find another one which is synonymous to it.
When somebody wants to learn a language, or maybe somebody is learning a language right now, what are some recommendations that you can give to them? Because we've talked about this before, and I know that you have some very good tips around that.
Well, think in that language. What I already said, thinking is critical, and you can do it anytime, anywhere. The other thing is vocabulary. Get the vocabulary on. They say there are different concepts, but one of the concepts which my mom was representing was that you need about 500 words to communicate in a colloquial language, in a simple language. 500. So that's one parameter. And let's assume that it is true for other languages too. Also, that's 500 you are able to say. That's called active vocabulary. But there's also something called passive vocabulary, which is something you understand. And usually the ratio between the one and the other is 1 to 3. So in order to be able to speak 500 words, you should understand 1,500, which is the ratio which has been around for a long time. Of course, you can say, I'm going to try to fool the ratio, and how to fool the ratio. So if I know passively 100 words, I'm sorry, if I know passively 1,500 words, so maybe I will do all the possible effort to be able to say 1,000, 1,200. How to do it? Well, there's a new word which comes across you write it down, and immediately, next minute or two, try to use it in a sentence. This way, from the passive, it quickly becomes active. Say it once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, until it becomes a habit, and you got it. So then you're fooling this 1 to 3 ratio, and you need less words passive to know passively to be able to have a conversation. So that's one of my tricks. The other trick is thinking in the language. The other thing is surround yourself. You don't need to go to the UK or to the US to learn English. You can just switch your phone to English, switch your computer to English, switch the world around you to English. Watch English movies on television with English subtitles, not local subtitles, but English subtitles. Then you can read and hear and understand the context. That will help you with the understanding. Listen to radios, to talk shows in English. Or if you're learning Spanish, do it in Spanish. Or if you're learning it in Hebrew, do it in Hebrew. So that are my kind of shortcut tips for learning languages.
That's fascinating. Just as a wrap up also about your story, after you left the television, you actually became a trainer and you did different things. Like you became a trainer for presentations, but also you also became a trainer for Tony Robbins and so on. Like, what is it that you do now, basically?
Well, today I consult, I advise executives working for technology companies. I developed years back a special concept designed for Europeans, how to communicate effectively with the American vice presidents who were approving the budgets, the headcounts, the milestones of the projects, how to get things approved. Everybody wants to get things approved. However, how to communicate with Americans is not always easy, especially if you come from a different culture circle. So North Europeans love to be very rational, but the emotional part is closed. And this way, they have all the good arguments, but very often they don't get the things approved they should have. And so that was a fun part on the communication side, how to communicate the same thing on the rational part, on the rational side, and on the emotional side. That's what fascinates me here. I also advise clients how to move ahead, how to get maybe into certain organizations and pitch. And but I'm still looking at other things now at the same time, looking at AI and data sets. I'm fascinating with the concept what we talked earlier about the data set, and yeah. So and I'm of course doing coaching, but everybody's coaching now, so it's not as fancy anymore. But supporting, I've been for a long time supporting local leaders who worked for an international company, how to be successful within their local subsidiary and also within their global organization, how to shine and get good results and get all the kudos they deserve.
Wow. So if somebody got inspired, if somebody would like to work with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Just Google my name. It's here, Olgerd Swida. Come to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the best platform. Say who you are, and I'm open to new ideas. I'm open to new creative things. Of course, AI is the big thing right now, but it does not need to be that. The important part is to make a difference, to add value to the world. That the world will be a better place once we're gone. And I think everyone, each of us, should contribute a small little piece to it. And if you are into it, let me know.
Beautiful. Wow. Very, very nice. Olo, one final piece of advice that you would like to give somebody who is just starting out on their journey, like a 30-second advice.
Learn, learn, learn. Be strong, mentally and physically strong. Be smart and have a good heart. And have a good heart to contribute beyond the money, beyond your benefits for yourself, to contribute to a better world.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being on the show and for all the incredible value that you provided. Thank you once again, Olgerd Swida.
Thank you, Ronny, for having me here.
Thank you for sticking with us until the end. To make this content even more valuable for you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts, and also share this video with somebody you care about who absolutely needs to see this. Thank you very much. Have an outstanding day and see you next time.